Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Adorama event space. We're here from American Photographic Artists, New York chapter, bringing you this program today. And we are happy to have you here in the space and happy to have everyone online. We wanted to let you know a little bit about APA, American Photographic Artists, before we get started. And we are a trade organization for professional photographers. We help photographers become more successful in their work. So whether you are a veteran photographer, or you're just getting started, we are happy to have you join us and take advantage of all the resources that we offer to our members. So look us up there in the chat. There are links where you can find us and think about joining us. There are all different levels of membership. And I'm sure you'll find something that's good for you. And keep checking back on the website because we continually post new classes. But we are happy to have today Joe Sinnott he's a teacher at School of Visual Arts. I will let him introduce himself. I will just say that he's a wonderful, wonderful teacher, very generous of spirit. And everyone I've ever heard of who's taken his classes has thought that. So without further ado, here's Joe.
I have to pay Debbie. Thank you for that. Good evening. My name is Joe. I'm a member of the undergraduate and continuing ed photography faculty at the School of Visual Arts. I teach a whole bunch of classes in continuing ed. And tonight, the thing that we're going to talk about is actually like a little bit of a mishmash of material that I cover in a bunch of different classes related to the business of shooting events. And it's kind of funny. Like a lot of photographers I know don't seem to enjoy shooting events. And when I talk about events, I'm not really talking about family events or consumer events or end user events. Not so much with the weddings and the family parties and things like that, because that is its own specialty with a lot of other ground to cover. The thing I'm talking about tonight is what a lot of us call grip and grins. Anybody ever hear that expression before? Grip and grins? Seth, can I borrow you for 1 second? Pictures of this. Hang on, wait, Seth. Sometimes there's an award, right? A lot of photographers I know for some reason don't love shooting that sort of thing, and I've never understood why. The money is good. The really hard thing about it is putting on a necktie. For me, whose direct fashion ancestor is the yoke that you put on an ox. My wife complains bitterly about putting on a pair of heels, and I don't blame her, but she doesn't have to stare at herself in a mirror while she ties a slip knot around her own neck. But, you know, the events are, compared to other specialties in photography, they don't require anywhere near the capital equipment investment. You don't need a ton of lighting gear. You don't need a studio. There are some things you definitely need, and like everything in photography, it's all either $50, $500, or $5,000. Like there's only three prices. But once you have that stuff, you don't need a lot more. There's not this never-ending cycle of buying more and more and more. It's a good entry point to meeting other kinds of clients. People see you in a context where they're relying on you. And really, all you need to do is show up, be charming, do a good job. And also, unlike a lot of other types of photography, business events tend to happen after business hours. So you don't have to walk away from your day job to get started in it and to even be successful at it. It can be a good hustle, it can be a good side hustle, and you can go as far with it as you want. A couple of things about shooting business events. Right from the very start, dress appropriately. Normally, I would not wear a suit and tie to come teach class, but this is what I normally wear when I'm shooting grip and grins, when I'm shooting somebody's business events, unless it's a black tie event, in which case I'm wearing a tuxedo. I have 2 tuxedos. And like one piece of advice I frequently give in my business classes, if you only have enough money to buy the tuxedo or the lens or whatever attire is appropriate for you for a black tie event, if you only have enough money for the tuxedo or the lens, buy the tuxedo and rent the lens. Because you're not going to need to rent the lens every time, but if you shoot a lot of, formal black tie types of events, the tuxedo is really handy. Engage with your subjects. I can't emphasize this enough. Candidates are great and clients will ask you for them. They talk about organic behind the scenes, candidy looking pictures, and they certainly want those, and you should shoot them. But pictures of people standing next to each other, smiling and happy, looking straight at the camera, they get a lot more mileage out of that than they credit for. It's amazing how much of those pictures and how often they get used by your clients. They may not ask for them, but at the end of the night, they're very, very happy to see them. A lot of business-related events are work for hire. Work for hire is every photographer's kryptonite. It is the least favorite thing, like I'm seeing the head shaking. And there's a reason for that. Like, we're all supposed to absolutely detest anything that smacks of work for hire, and I understand why, and I'm not opposed to it. But the thing that I do for a living, I take beautiful pictures for money. Everything is negotiable. I'm not happy about work for hire, and I tend to avoid it. But if the money is right, I'm not religiously opposed. Clients that are doing events that have their own guests and their own people and in their own space, they have a reason for wanting to control how those images get used. They have a reason for not wanting to see their guests show up in places where that could be pejorative, that could say bad things about the guests. And some places want to exert a lot of control to make that happen. I'm not automatically opposed to that, so long as the money is right. And even in that circumstance, if you do find yourself doing work for hire assignments, make sure that there's a clause in your contract that is that specifically licenses the pictures back to you to use for your own promotion. If people are opposed to including that clause, it is a very, very good excuse to make your rate be exorbitant. And use a contract. Contracts are really useful things. In their essence, they foster trust by making sure that what is expected of everybody in a transaction is very clearly laid out. I'm not saying that every single assignment that I do involves a contract, but I use them more often than not. And the bigger and more complicated the assignment is, the more benefit a contract has to you. You don't want to shoot an assignment and then have people start like proposing, now we can get these pictures in the morning, or we want to add conditions to the terms of your being here that we did not discuss ahead of time. Contracts make sure that what everybody owes and what's expected of everybody is well laid out ahead of time. That's a really, really good thing. What do people pay you for? I tend to do this as a sort of Socratic dialogue, so I don't mind if people have any responses to this. And I'm going to preface it by saying, in the world of work, in the world of exchanging my time for money, there are really three things that people pay you for. Anybody want to take a guess? Oh, never raise your hand with me. Yes, although you're right, but think broader. Like, it's a bigger umbrella than this. Like, the three buckets of what people pay you for are really big buckets. And then there are a lot of very specific balls that go in those buckets. But beyond customer service, or more broadly than that, what do you think people pay you for? That is the end result of your work. But expertise or brains, which is another way of saying talent. Because in the world of photography, talent, expertise, these are all under the category of brains. Like, good ideas are worth more than bad ideas. Being the smartest person in the room is valuable. That's one thing that people pay you for. What do you think the other two might be?
Being able to think on your feet.
Brains.
Your equipment. You?
Yes and no, because if I've got
Repeat what they say.
Oh, equipment. So yes and no, because if my equipment is the least preferable, most inferior equipment in the world, and my pictures are the most beautiful, wow, I must have a really big brain. So valuable, right? Anyone else? Should I give it? Do I have to give it away?
Yes.
How about toil? The sweat of your brow, picking things up and putting things down. Hard work. That's one of the things that people pay you for. You're exchanging your time, your precious life, for money. That's work. Work, like toil, comes in a lot of different kinds, but toil is one of the things that people pay you for. And the third thing is responsibility, being in charge, owning your work. In the great grand landscape of, like most jobs that anybody works involves some combination of those three things. Some jobs, they skew more towards one thing or another. I would hazard a guess that the smartest ditch digger in the world probably makes similar money to the least smart ditch digger in the world. But every job that you're ever going to work involves some combination of these three things. And these are the things that people are paying you for. Yes, talent is important, but that comes back to brains. And having better pictures means bigger brains, means more money and more valuable. We're going to come back to this in a minute. Yes, sir.
Question in the chat.
Oh.
Do you have any resources for writing contracts?
There are. The short answer is yes, but I don't have them with me for my 1 hour thing tonight. One thing I could say is take a class. But there are a lot of things available online, and APA is not a bad source for contract templates. There are also some good books out there on photography business practices, some of which come with contract templates. So, factors that help you determine your fee, beyond the number of hours you're going to spend on your pins, beyond the number of hours that you're actually going to show up and do the job. How much work are you going to do before and after the job? A job where you've got to, excuse me, edit 200 pictures might not require as large a fee as a job where you've got to edit 20,000 pictures. How much equipment do you have to carry, which speaks to toil. The more weight and the more stuff you have to lug around, the harder you're going to work, the more you should get paid. What extra services or value-added services are you providing beyond being a good photographer and making beautiful pictures? How fast do you need to turn the job around? If I'm shooting tonight and people need pictures tomorrow morning, I usually get paid more than if I shoot tonight and people need their pictures in a week. And how far do you need to go? Because if, like a job that I'm shooting across the street, I might be much more inclined to negotiate than a job that I'm shooting in another state. How many people are on the job? Because there are no shortage of big events that you can do in the world that involve more than one photographer, and you're responsible for all of them. Responsibility is something you get paid for. How good does the job need to be? How good does it need to look? And I realize that we all try to do our best work all the time. And that's certainly a worthy goal, and we should all do it. But you can't make $1 out of 15 cents. You can only make things look as beautiful as you can make them look, and sometimes that involves the resources that your client is investing in the job too. More beautiful, it is really easy to make beautiful pictures of beautiful things. If you want to know if your photographer has chops, ask to see their pictures of ugly things. What have other people been paid to do the same work? The notion of market rates, which is a little fuzzy, and as a concept, I understand why we talk about it, although I don't have a grand amount of use for market rates myself. And of course, how much money do they have? Because please give me all of your money. Like ultimately, the thing I want is to get all of the money. Like that's the job, is to the client's job is to save as much money as possible, and your job is to get as much of that money as possible. But seriously, 3 numbers that you really want to know when you go in pitching the rates for an assignment. One is, how much do you want to make? What is your target number? What do you think your goal is? The second number is, how much are you going to start negotiating at, which should be a number that is higher than the amount of money that you want to make. But of these 3, the one that I really believe in my heart is the most important is, what is the smallest amount of money that you would do the job for? This is a walk-away number. This is the number below which you will not accept the assignment no matter what. It is the number that helps you define what you're worth. If I'm pitching an assignment to a potential client, usually I open at about $450 an hour with a 2-hour minimum. That's usually my opening salvo. Gives me room to negotiate lower and still feel like I'm making a good night's pay. So if that's my thing, and I'm saying, okay, 2-hour gig, $900, Eric, how much, like, simple business event, dress like this, camera flash, would you be willing to do that job for less than $900?
No, at this time.
No? Wow, nice, okay. That is somebody that I'm clearly not like competing too hard with. Would anybody be willing to do that job for less than $900? Good for you. Now what if they turn around and say, we don't have 900, but we could like, but 850, like we could pay you 850 to do that job. None of you would do it for 850? I would probably do it for 850. So then 900 was not your walkaway number. How about 800? How many of you might do it for 800? Now keep in mind, we're talking about a weekday night, 6 to 8 p.m. Anybody be willing to do it for 800? Yeah, 800? Okay, something to consider. So you'd be willing to do it for 800. What about 750? You wouldn't be willing to do it for 750. Would you be willing to do it for 750? You would. So 800 was not your walkaway number. And this is the thing I'm trying to lean into. If my walkaway, if I'm pitching 900, my walkaway number is 700, and they say $699, I'm going to say, oh, I'm so sorry. I would really love to work with you on this, but unfortunately, I just can't go below 700. I hope you'll keep me in mind when an occasion arises where all of our resources align a little better, right? Because 700 is my walkaway number, and that, like, that's religion to me. If my walkaway number is 700, not 600, not 650, not 699, $700. That's my walkaway number. It's the only way you're ever going to know what you're worth. And there's wiggle room there too. So I come up, they say, well, we just can't go 700, but we could go 650. All right, what can you do to make 700 not be your walkaway number? One thing you could do is change the conditions of the assignment. Well, do you really need me for 2 hours? Because most events don't really get rolling for the first half an hour, right? Or how long do you need the pictures back? Oh, you can wait a week? All right, a week gives me a lot of time to sort of fit that editing in around other stuff. If I change the conditions of the assignment, there might be a reason to go underneath my walkaway number. But for a given set of terms, whatever my walkaway number is, that's my walkaway number. Okay? A little advice when it comes to negotiating. One, don't give, like when people call you on the phone while you're walking down the street on your cell phone and say, can you ballpark it for me? Don't do that. Wait until you get to a place where you can actually sit down and think about what you're doing. Wait until you get to a place, whether it's the coffee shop or the cafe or your computer or whatever it is. When people really lean on you to give them an immediate ballpark thing number now, mostly they are engaging in a negotiating tactic. It's a perfectly legit tactic, and it doesn't say anything about anybody that people are trying to negotiate. But mostly what they're doing is engaged in a negotiating tactic. They're trying to lock you into something before you've had a chance to really think about it. And no matter how hard they lean, just really, I have a couple of questions. I need to get to a place where I can look at the parameters that you've offered me. Could you send me an email describing the assignment, where it's located, terms, like any information you have, and this way I can look at it and give you a real number. Oh, but couldn't you just give me like a rough thing right now? No, I'm just really sorry I can't do that. Don't let people press you into giving numbers before you're ready to do it. Do your estimates in a place where you are comfortable coming up with real information and that you have a place to think. Walking down the street in New York City in sub-zero temperature with an ambulance going by is not a really good way to think about your business. Try not to make deals with people walking down the street on your phone for exactly the same reason. And as much as possible, do business in writing. Writing does not have to be like back and forth contracts for every single exchange of communication. But email or something like it is a much better way to do business than everybody trying to remember what the other person said after the fact. As much as possible, do business in writing. It's professional. Remember that when you are coming up with your pricing, you've got basically two types of expenses in your business. One are billable expenses. These are cost recovery expenses. Photography tends to be a 100% cost recovery business, and that involves the expenses related to a specific assignment. For events, that usually only includes travel and transportation. It could include other support people like assistants or potentially another photographer if it's a multi-photographer event, potentially equipment rental if there's something outre and specialized that you need for that particular assignment. A lot of events don't really want to hear about expenses, and they don't particularly want to know about it. And it might be easier when dealing with some of your clients to just take the travel expenses and fold them into your fee. If you were going to charge $6, just add the travel expenses and round up a little bit to some nice round number and make it be about that. Most clients are more comfortable looking with flat numbers for events than they are looking at an invoice with a lot of line items. The other kind of expense, though, is just the cost of doing business, your overhead. The things that you need just in order to run your business. How much is your phone costing you, your internet, your business insurance? All of these things have to be part of your thinking when you're determining your fee in the first place. Whatever your fee is going to be, not only has to cover your business overhead, but it also has to cover your living expenses. You need to think about how much of my living am I making on my photography? And if it's all of your living, you need to know what your monthly budget is in order to come up with fees that allow you to stay in business. The thing that I see most frequently amongst my peers and students are people that don't really think that hard about how much they need to live and will do an assignment for any amount of money just to keep moving. Sometimes it's not a good idea. You have to have rates that align with your actual costs and that are in some way self-consistent. It's a good place to pause and see if there are any questions. Wow, all right, the chat is
There's no questions.
nice. Anybody else? I am either really, really good or really bad.
You're really, really good.
Oh, I'm sorry. I should mention this because this is the same way that I run my classes. Never raise your hand. Just speak up. No. Don't be. It's not a sorry thing. I just, to the extent that I need to maintain control over the audience, it will not be telling you what to do with your hands.
What would you say, starting off doing event photography, from how much you should start off on until you feel like you're a year or two experienced, and how much you should slowly be increasing?
It's an excellent question, and I get this question a lot. So let's talk about the difference between you and me for a minute. I don't know. I'm just using my eyes, but you seem younger than me because there are pyramids that celebrate the same birthday as me. So I've got 30-something years of experience doing it. I own tens of thousands of dollars worth of gear. I've got a pretty good client list. So let's talk about the differences between you and me in terms of the three things that we started with: toil, brains, responsibility. You and I are pitching at the same event, where we're pitching the same client, one of us is going to get that assignment. Is there any difference in responsibility between your work and my work? Is there? No. It doesn't matter how long you've been doing it for. The responsibility is the same, whether it's the first event you've ever shot or whether you've done thousands of them. How about toil? Is there any difference in the amount of toil that we're going to put in photographing the same event with the same expectations and the same shot list? If anything, I'm going to work less hard because I'm experienced and crafty and know how to do crafty, work less hard things, right? Brains, on paper, there might be an argument that my experience translates to wisdom, which is a kind of brains which is valuable. And that might be the case. but you might have more talent in your pinky than I have in my whole body. And don't get me wrong, I don't think that talent is this like spiritual ethnogenetic gift that we're born with. I think it's a muscle and that you build it by using it, and it's a function of your interest. You want it more, you work harder at it, you get better at it. If you saw the pictures that got me into art school, you would not be sitting here listening to me talk right now. I got better with time because I wanted it really badly and I worked hard at it. But just on paper, without looking at your pictures and mine, there might be an argument to be made that I have more brains. But 2 out of those 3 things is exactly identical between you and me, which means without considering any qualitative factors at all, just quantitative factors, minimally, you're worth 2/3 of me. And that's assuming your talent is 0, which I'm pretty sure is not going to be the case, right? I would pick a number that, you know, one of the advantages that younger people have over where I am in my life is that my life expenses are a lot higher, so I have less room to flex. Like if $450 an hour is my target, I can't go down to $250 an hour and make a living. Maybe you can, and I'm not saying that you should. But, and I'm not saying that you should compete with everybody on price. Like that's a race to the bottom. Don't, like, it's like they say in war games, like the best way to win that game is not to play. But you certainly have more room to wiggle there than I do. And there are a lot of different ways to go at that. If you're going to go for a number that's lower than you would normally be comfortable with, the one good thing to do is find an excuse to offer a discount so that you're articulating it to your client as a one-time thing and not as your regular, oh, you're not for profit. All right. Or first-time client, like whatever the first-time client discount is going to be. That gives you an opportunity to potentially quote a lower rate, one that you're comfortable with, one that compensates you righteously for doing a good job, but also without setting the dangerous precedent of being the least costly photographer. Is that useful?
Yeah. Do you find that when you're getting hired for events, that like you have to show them like your portfolio or your past photos or
Website. I'm fortunate that I've reached the point in my life where I know a lot of people, so I get a lot of that going on. And those people usually have to convince somebody else, like present my work to somebody else. There's a team, and my website is the most powerful tool I have for that.
There's a question in the chat if you're ready.
Sure.
Well, there's 2 questions in the chat. One is it ever a good idea to ask a client what their budget is?
No.
Okay.
No, and I'm going to explain why. It's an excellent question. Thank you very much for asking it. So you're the client, I'm the photographer. I say, what's your budget? And the thing that I should expect to hear is none of your business. I want to know what you're going to charge me to do it. How much money I have in the bank is none of your business. And that's what you should expect to hear. It is not a good way to start things off. I will say this. If I start at $450 an hour and the client says, you know, with a 2-hour minimum, and the client says, great, we'll see you Thursday. In the back of my mind, I'm going, because I clearly just left some amount of money on the table if they were ready to pay my top rate. But at the same time, without any conversation, argument, or negotiation, I pitched the amount of money that I want to make, and they said yes. What's the problem? Can't I just be happy about that? Right? Can't I just be happy that there's an amount of money I want to make and somebody wants to pay it? Okay, I'll just be happy. It's an excellent question, though. It is. There can be crafty ways to ask that question, like what's their budget, but most of those crafty ways never come up when you're shooting events, when you're shooting business events. When you're working on shoots in the studio or model-related things, like, you know, things that lifestyle pictures, things that involve much more production, there can be crafty ways to get that question in there that are worth pursuing. But in this type of work, I've never had it go well for me. What was the other question?
The other question is, are any of these tips different if you're working with a nonprofit?
No. Believe it or not, they're not. The vast majority of my Grip and Grin events are for nonprofits. If they really lean on the nonprofit thing, like, oh, we're hungry, feed us, usually my response is, I understand that you're a nonprofit, but I'm not. Like, I need to make enough money to make a living. The nonprofit thing can provide me with a point of entry, an excuse to lower the rate on a specific assignment by saying, oh, you're a nonprofit. All right, well, like, we'll knock 10% off of the nonprofit, or 15%, or whatever I think it needs to be. And the thing that I'm more inclined to do with any client that tells me, we don't have the budget to meet you as far as you want to go, but we really want to work with you. I try to find circumstances where I change the parameters of the assignment. Not a ton, not in ways that make my services like unuseful. Unuseful? All right, I made up that word. Unuseful to the client, but like, can we extend the delivery deadline? Can we shorten the amount of time that I'm there? Instead of 2 hours, 90 minutes. Like, what can we do to make the assignment more accessible to their budget in a way that does not have me negotiating against myself? How is that?
I have a question. So,
This is going great.
$4.50 an hour for your time, for your toil there.
Yeah.
What if it's a job where there are a lot of photos to go through, and you could see that maybe it's a whole day of culling, editing, and prepping the photos?
The $4.50 an hour in my world includes all of the time that it takes me to deliver that assignment. The thing that you're talking about are much, much bigger assignments where the amount of time might be. There was a project I used to work on. It was a multi-photographer event, very big, bless you. Sort of I'm going to call it a trade show for lack of a better phrase, a conference. And between myself and the other two photographers that I hired to work with me on that, at the end of the project, we would generate 25,000 pictures, which is like a punishment from the court, right? It is sitting in front of your computer for stupid amounts of time going arrow, 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 delete, arrow, zoom, back, arrow, delete, delete, ooh, super delete. And it's like you're never going to stop doing that. So there are two directions to go there. One is, it's an extraordinarily unusual circumstance. The thing I would do is make sure that my fee reflects the amount of time that I'm going to spend. If normally I would be getting, I'm just going to make up a number, $5,000 a day, all right, now it's $10,000 a day, because this is a lot of work. But another thing that I might consider is employing the services of a professional picture editor. Normally the photographer-picture editor relationship goes editor to photographer, where the photographer is the vendor. But there's a narrow number of circumstances where it goes the other way, where a photographer might hire somebody who's an expert at deleting things fast, figure out what they would want to charge to cull 25,000 pictures down to, 6, and make that billable expense a line item on your invoice, and of course part of your estimate. How's that? Okay?
It's not so much a question, but they're inquiring, like, what about wear and tear on the gear? Is that a factor in the fee?
No, because your fee should reflect the amount of money that it takes for you to be in business. And if the wear and tear on the gear is sufficient that you're burning out a camera every year, you need to raise your fee such that you can replace your camera every year. These are things that, like, extra fees, like camera wear and tear fee on your invoice, clients don't want to see that. What they want to do is know how much they're paying you and have you run your business. Okay? Any others? What is insurance? Because this is, I'm standing in a camera store, so there's no way that I'm going to say that this is more important than cameras. It's hard to take pictures without cameras. but it is almost impossible to shoot events without having even some basic amount of liability insurance. Insurance is a business that makes their money by accurately assessing the relationship between the odds of bad things happening and how bad are the bad things. Like, when the odds of a bad thing happening are very high, but the actual bad thing is very, very small, that's not a tough relationship to be in. If the odds of a bad thing happening are really extraordinarily high, and the bad thing is also extraordinarily bad, once again, that might not be a bad place to be. But a lot of venues will not let you walk through the door to shoot any kind of event unless you've got an insurance policy. This is something that everybody that's shooting events should just, like, don't wait. Like, run, don't walk to your favorite insurance broker and figure out where you're getting your general liability policy from. Most of my clients, not just events, but all of my, but in anything I do, there's a clause in that contract, whether we're working for my contract or their contract. If we're working for my contract, they add the clause where I am asserting that I have appropriate insurance for what I'm doing. Sometimes they include specific numbers for amounts of insurance, sometimes they don't. But you cannot put your name to you can't put your signature to a contract that asserts that you have insurance and then not have the insurance, because that means that you have breached that contract at the moment that you put your name to it. It's not a good way to do business. General liability insurance is the insurance that I'm talking about right now. There are a lot of different kinds of insurance that you use in the world of photography, but this is the most basic thing that every photographer should have before they walk into any place to shoot any kind of event. It covers damage to other people's property, medical costs if you injure somebody, and death and dismemberment, which I don't know how a photographer makes that happen, but there it is. It's part of the policy. Like, my policy is, I think it covers $4 million aggregate, $2 million per incident, and it costs me $400 or $500 a year for that part of my insurance. It's a bargain. Like, as part of the cost of doing business, it is a really low cost of doing business. Remember, the general liability insurance pays out to other people. It doesn't pay you anything. There's other kinds of insurance that you use for insuring your equipment and your office supplies and your computer and your data and all of that stuff. The things you want to know when you're looking at a general liability policy: what's the total maximum payout per incident? What is the total payout in a year? What is the total payout over the lifetime of the policy? Some policies have that, some policies don't. Is past work covered? And if so, how far back? Or in other words, if I start with that insurance company tomorrow, how far back before tomorrow am I covered for? Which seems silly. Like, why would it cover anything other than the day that you start? But there are reasons why that might interest you, why that is something that is worth knowing about. Make sure that whatever policy you get, that the work done by people who are under your direct supervision is also covered under the policy. That doesn't matter whether they're freelancers or employees. Photo assistants, potentially makeup people, although they should have their own insurance. Like, whatever it is you're doing, make sure that that whoever it is that's working directly for you is also covered under that same policy. And, excuse me, sorry. And in what regions are you covered? Like, most policies here in the United States will cover you within the United States. They don't necessarily cover you when you cross the border into Canada. If you need insurance while you're traveling to another country, call your insurance agent and make sure that you're covered. And if you're not covered, add that coverage, at least for the period of time that you're going to be traveling abroad. I'm sorry, did I see somebody? No. Okay?
Do you want to do a really quick question?
Sure.
Do you have any tips for approaching clients and acquiring clients, like reaching and acquiring?
This is what the short answer is yes, but I would be grateful if can we come back to that in a little bit. Sure. The other kind of insurance that I wanted to mention is professional liability insurance, which is what doctors and lawyers call malpractice insurance, and what everybody else calls errors and omissions insurance. This has to do with the negligent performance of your duties, whether you were actually negligent or not. You're photographing a wedding, none of the pictures come out, the bride and groom decide that this is a tragedy beyond words, they sue you. That's what errors and omissions insurance is about, and usually you don't need a ton of this. A few tens of thousands of dollars, it depends on the size of the events you're doing and things like that, and I'm not sure that it is the sort of thing that would come up all that often in business events. But as an addition to your general liability insurance, it's a bargain. And having a little of it is probably not a bad idea. It covers a whole bunch of things that might not be covered by your general liability policy. Hopefully, for most events, you're not getting into a lot of copyright infringement, but that can happen. Model release issues, that can happen. Reshoot expenses, hopefully that doesn't come up very often with events. Card failure. Anybody ever have a memory card fail? Isn't that just the best? And by the best, what I mean is there aren't enough prescription medications in the world to calm me down. And I carry a ton of cards. When one goes bad, I'm going out of my mind. Any insurance-related questions? Okay. One other quick topic that I want to get into because this comes up a lot. Usually not in this sort of context, but with some of my undergraduate students, the story of my hard drive failed and I don't have anything anywhere else and none of it's backed up anywhere and I've lost my life of pictures. If I had a nickel for every time I heard that story, I'd have a lot of nickels. And when you're shooting events, you're shooting things that can't be, like, you can't reshoot that. The guests showed up, the event happened, the event ended. If your pictures are gone, they're gone. There's no way to get past that. So taking appropriate steps that are redundant and fault tolerant to make sure that you can deliver the work to your client, that if something bad happens to your computer, you've still got all of the work. And the thing that I usually talk about this is edit from a RAID and back up on another external device. The RAID could be inside of your computer, or the RAID could be an external device that's plugged into your computer. But the idea behind a RAID, RAID standing for Redundant Array of Inexpensive Drives. If you're a photographer and you shoot stills, the type of RAID that you're looking at is RAID 1, otherwise called dual drive mirroring. The capacity of the entire RAID is the capacity of one single drive. If you have a 2 terabyte RAID, that means it's got two 2 terabyte drives, and it provides 2 terabytes worth of storage. If one fails, everything is still on the other one. And in a good RAID, if one fails, you remove the dead drive, you put in a new one, it rebuilds the new drive with the data that's on the old one, and you're back in business. This is what I edit from. The smaller ones, the ones that you see with 2 bays, those are simple 2-drive RAIDs. In my case, those would be configured for RAID 1. There are larger RAIDs that are more expensive that can be configured for other types of fault tolerance. But if you're just going simple, a 2-drive RAID, that's what I edit off of. And then I also have everything backed up to another external device that is also in my home. I download 2 copies of the drive when I get home 2 copies of the assignment when I get home from whatever event I'm shooting. I then rename the files that I'm going to edit from, that I'm going to cull, in a way that is in some way descriptive for the assignment. CTL New Year's Party 2023, like whatever it is. I edit the stuff that's on the RAID and I leave the stuff that's on the external drive alone. And I do this for a couple of reasons. The stuff that's on the RAID is eventually going to become the finished job that I deliver to the client. The external device is there in case my computer gets zapped with lightning, like some power outage causes the file system to get corrupted. I still have everything on the external device. And I usually delete pictures on the basis of which ones stink. It is sometimes the case, not always, but sometimes the case that a week or 2 weeks or even a couple of months after I deliver the job to the client, they will come back to me and say, we were looking for a picture of such and such. We really need that. Maybe I delivered I deleted the picture of such and such because I wasn't happy with it. For whatever reason, I thought it was inferior to other pictures. But if they really need the content, I can go back to that external drive that says, don't touch this, and recover go through it again and see if the content that they're looking for is there. Make sure I actually took that picture, and then deliver from that. I make my client happy. Things that are on that external drive usually stay there for a year. I keep the original file numbers as they came out of the camera. I'm in the habit of resetting my file numbers before I shoot every assignment so that every assignment starts on the number 1. I don't change the file numbers so that when I go back to that external device, if I have to go back to that external device, I can find what I'm looking for. And I make sure to add IPTC data to every single picture that goes out the door. None of my clients get pictures that don't have embedded International Press Telecommunications Conference data. This is different than EXIF data. EXIF data is embedded by your camera. IPTC data is something that you have control over. Things like my email address, my website, my copyright notice, the shoot date, location if that's important, captions and keywords. If I have the names of the people in the picture and somehow that's relevant, I embed as much stuff as I possibly can because I deliver a nice, polished, finished job. If my client needs any of that information, all they got to do is pop the picture open in the right program, and it's all there for them. And if somebody's trying to figure out who took that picture, I want them to know that, right?
Yeah,
Having my email and my website in there, that's not a bad thing to do. And my copyright notice.
There's actually a question in the chat about, do you ever watermark the images?
No.
This is the replacement of the watermark, yeah?
No, this is what I don't do this instead of the watermark. First off, when my clients are paying me for the work, I deliver pictures that they're ready to use. And it's funny, I married a photographer, poor judgment on my part, other than the fact that we're a great couple and very much in love. But that counts. But she is fine watermarking images and I am not. And this is a philosophical thing, and it's not a right-wrong thing. Deep in my soul, I have this feeling that putting a watermark over my image makes the image look less good. It sends a subtle message that I don't respect my own work. Other people feel differently about that, and they're not wrong to feel that way. It's looking at it the other way, watermarking it prevents people from using pictures that they don't have any right to use and that they shouldn't be using. That's a perfectly good argument. It's just not the argument that I put the most weight on, excuse me, for myself. For myself, I don't worry that much about people stealing my pictures. If they get caught, I'm going to send, if I catch them, I'm going to send them a bill. And I should probably worry about it a little more, but I just don't. I have so many other things to worry about in life. Was that useful? Oh, wow. I just happened to, at events, do I avoid taking photos of kids who happen to be at the event too? Get written permission from parents or just take photos? I just take photos. If I have to delete pictures later, I delete pictures later. If an event has kids at it, usually it is the client's responsibility to make sure that the people attending the event know that they and their kids are going to be photographed, and that attendance at the event in some way is permission to do that. I don't worry about that. What I do on my Instagram or my website is different. I don't put images of minors on those things without permission or release or something. But when I'm shooting a gig, the thing I concentrate on is making beautiful pictures. If some of those pictures have to go away later, then they go away. Okay. Okay. Moving on.
If you had to bring one lens, only one lens to an event,
24 to 70 f2.8. I'm sorry, should I have waffled on that a little more and gone, oh, I don't know, it depends. 24 to 70 f2.8. I own far more lenses than makes any sense. Like dumb how many lenses I own, like dumb. And by the way, the 24 to 70 f2.8, that's the one that my wife and I are most likely to argue about who needs it the most on any given day. So now we own two because it makes peace in the home. More so than any other lens I own, that's the one I use the most. At least for events. Like there are other kinds of assignments I shoot where there are other lenses I use more. But, and you know, it might not, for somebody else, it might not necessarily have to be an f2.8. It could be a 24 to 120 f4. A lot of events, grip and grins, they're shot with flash. The need to open up to f2.8 is not that high when you're shooting with a flash. Okay? Sorry?
All these cameras are 24 to 120 pointed at you right now.
Extremely useful focal length. There's a subset of work that I do where I need the extra f-stop, so I have the 24 to 70. And I wanted to get into one like technical thing, like one thing that comes up, like how many of you have ever used a flash? Anybody? Does it look familiar? This is a common tale, right? Right. Red eyes, reflection, glare, overexposure, very common story. Like there are other classes I teach where I get into this a lot more, but there's one flash technique that I use a lot when I'm shooting events. So I thought maybe I would talk about that one technique a little bit tonight. And it's called slow sync or dragging the shutter. It is the aspect of doing fill flash where the flash is not fill, where the flash is main and the ambient is fill. And it all starts with identifying your main light. If you're in a room like this and you've got a flash in the ambient light, your main light is the brightest source of light. What is it going to be, the flash or the ambient? You're shooting grip and grins at some party. What's the brightest source of light, the flash or the available light? It's the flash. If you ever have any doubts, hold the flash right up against your eyes and set it up. No, don't do that. That's actually, I probably shouldn't have even suggested that. But like flash, like when you're working with a flash, it's not hard to be in a situation, and I'm not suggesting this is what you do, but it's not hard to be in a situation where you're 10 feet away and could shoot at f16 with 4 AA batteries. There's no light source in the world that gives you more light for the energy you put into it. F16 is competitive with broad daylight, like direct sunlight. Nothing gives you more light for the energy you put into it than electronic flash. So in this case, and because flashes give us a lot of control about what f-stop we're going to shoot at, usually when I'm shooting events, I'm at f8 or something like it. I want a little depth of field. I don't need a ton, but I need some. And then I'm going to set my camera to f8 because I have my flash configured to deliver correct exposure at f8. And then I have to set my fill light to deliver 1 stop less light than the main light. And the fill light is my ambient light, and I don't have any control over the windows. The thing I'm actually going to control is my shutter speed. Let's suppose that a correct exposure in that room right now is 1/125th at f2. That means that 1 stop less than a correct exposure would be 1/125th at f2.8, which is the same, which is the same as 1/60th at f4, which is the same as 1/30th at f5.6, which is the same as 1/15th at f8, which means I'm going to set my camera to 1/15th at f8. That's going to give me correct exposure on my subject with the flash and allow the background to fill in so that my background does not go black. What's the problem with walking around with a handheld camera shooting at a 15th of a second. What's the problem? Motion blur. Not just motion blur from my subject, but from my hands. But one of the effects of flash is to freeze motion. The actual duration of your flash is a 400th, an 800th, a 1000th, a 1600th of a second. One of the benefits to electronic flash is that it has the effect of freezing motion. I just went through the math of it, but when you're actually doing it with your camera, you literally just bring it up to your eye and start spinning down the shutter speed until it shows -1. Because that's what the light meter in your camera is telling you, is your ambient exposure. Once you're at that shutter speed and your ambient exposure is one stop less than correct, computers.
From the 90s.
Yeah, well, and this is what you get for it. Now, some of these have some motion blur around the edges, but by and large, the subject is sharp. And you see how the backgrounds aren't black? Even the pictures that show substantial motion blur don't show a ton. Also, longer shutter speeds allow you to get like the signage and the lights and the things in the background. You know, things that the flash would normally wash out, a longer shutter speed gives us a chance to fill in. There are two pictures there that I normally would not include except the pictures of people fiddling with their tote bags, right? And the pictures with the signage in the background, right? None of your clients are ever going to ask for this, but they want it. We call it napkin duty. Well, people that work with me on gigs, we call it napkin duty because it is pictures of the co-sponsor's logo on a cocktail napkin with a lot of out-of-focus people having fun in the background. It's pictures of people enjoying the branded, logoed swag. It's pictures that your client shows to their marketing partners and to other people that were involved in the event to show them what their participation got for them. Logos and signage and things like that are important when you're shooting events. Try to make your client happy that way.
Do you have any recommendation for metering modes?
Manual.
Metering mode?
You're right, sorry. You know, a lot of that kind of depends on your camera. Like, I use a lot of Nikons, so I feel pretty comfortable leaving my cameras on matrix even when I'm shooting with a TTL flash. Although I also have straight up automatic flash units that I use from way back when, where I don't really have to pay any attention to or much attention to the metering mode. For a lot of this, I would probably leave it in matrix unless your camera has already broken your heart that way, in which case it's time to try the other ones. I wish that I had a comprehensive piece of advice that just always applied, but it just doesn't work. The different manufacturers do different things with their cameras, and they don't necessarily do the same things with every model of camera. There's just no piece of advice that's always going to work. The thing that you should do is test and test and test until you find the one that works best and most consistently for you. Okay? And use a diffuser. Like, the flash is the enemy of everybody in the, like, nobody's naked flesh survives the scrutiny of precision optics in the first place. Flash is designed to be a pretty high contrast light source. Your perception of texture in a photograph is a function of contrast. I hate being reminded of how much texture there is in my face. There was a time when there was less texture. It was nice. Flash does not do anything to make that better. These are all commercially made diffusers, and the benefits of using like any diffuser can't be gainsaid. Softer, even more diffuse, more flattering light. Like really focused, contrasty light tends not to be flattering. Do something to soften it up. And if you don't want to buy a commercial diffuser, this is where Adorama throws me out tonight, it's not hard to make. You got a ping pong ball? A ping pong ball. If you're going to use an old takeout food container, please wash it thoroughly before you show up for the assignment. But it ain't hard. Like, you don't have to hemorrhage money to make this happen.
It's all right. We use pizza boxes as reflectors
Nice.
here, so don't worry about it.
I hope that wow, it's an Adorama pizza box.
Yeah, man.
All right, now I know what I'm buying here tonight.
They don't exist yet.
Okay. Before I get like deeply into the Q&A, I would like to talk about upcoming classes I'm teaching at the School of Visual Arts.
Link is in the chat, by the way.
Pardon?
I put the link in the chat.
Thank you very much. I'm teaching a studio lighting class on Tuesday evenings starting on February 6th. They position it on the website as being more of an intermediate or advanced class, but it's really not. I get students in that class with every single level of experience. If you know the difference between an f-stop and a bus stop and you've ever handled a light meter, you're ready for like this class. It's a good intro studio class for 10 weeks. Location and event photography is one of my favorites. Usually that starts, the first night is a Zoom session with advanced techniques and talk a bit about this type of photography. Then we go shoot together as a group for 3 weeks. Usually we shoot like a sports thing and a theater thing and a music thing. And then the last week we do a group critique on Zoom. Photo techniques is my, it starts basic and gets more and more advanced. It's a technical lecture. Once again, it meets online on Monday evenings, starting on February 12th. I like this class a lot. I've been teaching this class in various evolving forms for 30 years now. And photo techniques. It starts with f-stop, shutter speed, ISO, and basic reciprocity law, and I am going to, only on the basis of what other people have told me, no matter how much about that you know, there is something about it that you don't, which comes up there. Color calibration and profiling, flash, there's a couple of weeks of color, white balance, the nature of color, optics, we get into optics. Here's an example. You're photographing Bruce Springsteen, and this is an example from my life. You have to photograph Bruce Springsteen on an APS camera from 110 feet from the stage. What focal length lens do you need to shoot waist up? There's a formula for that. It's not hard. Like, I do not spend my time walking up and down the street with every single lens trying to figure out which one works. I just plug a bunch of numbers into a spreadsheet I created and get the answer. It's nice to just know. Like, it's nice to know. So this class starts a little on the basic side and it just gets progressively more advanced. And if you really want to know what it covers, my email address is going to come up in a moment. I'll take questions from anyone about anything in the entire world. I can email you a syllabus if you're interested. My business class runs on Thursday nights starting on the 15th. That's an 8-week course, basically in photography business classes. Business practices. It covers some of the things that we talked about tonight with more depth, and then it covers a bunch of other stuff too. Location assignments, content, working with shot lists, client relations. Once again, if you're interested, I'd be more than glad to send you a syllabus. And after location and event photography ends, this semester we do a 5-week sports photography thing. We usually cover like 2 individual sports and 2 team sports. That's 4 weeks of shooting, finishing with a 5th week on Zoom as a critique. Those are them. Oh, come on. Really? Oh, and that's me, along with the link to the things. I don't believe that there are too many email emergencies in the world, but I usually get back to people pretty promptly. If you've got any question about anything in the entire world, I shudder to think how that's going to go. And then, like, what's in my camera bag? All right, this looks weird, but just give me a second here. I think that this is normally like a talk thing, but I decided to bring the camera bag because I thought that that might be more fun than just talking about what's in the camera bag. How am I doing for time, Eric? Am I ruining the space? Okay.
Well, while he's doing that, if you're in the chat or watching this, you might want to consider hitting subscribe so you don't miss any of these other stuff. If you're a fan of Adorama, you are not subscribed to this channel because that's a 1.5 million subscriber channel. And this one's not even close. So hit subscribe, hit like, help Joe out. He needs to feed his family. Look at this guy. And check out the rest of the APA events. The link has been pinned to the top. And if you're watching this on playback, drop a comment so that Joe feels like he's loved because, again, he's lonely. Look at him. Look at the face. Look at him. Look at this guy's gunslinging over here.
Wow.
Look at this classic.
I mean, it's
guy.
about event photography, right? I thought I would show up as though I were actually doing the job.
I mean, you look like you're about to crack some case. I mean, look at you.
Oh, there it is. Now, this is the same high voltage battery that Noah used on the Ark.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
Well, first generation quantum too, but they're not hard for me to keep in good working order, so I use them. You see this harness thing that I'm wearing? I feel like an idiot when I put this on. Or, you know, somebody that's not quite right. I mean, there's a lot of leather and brass here, right? But I will never go back to wearing two cameras around my neck on straps again. This thing just changed my life. It's unbelievable.
He's going from here to a bar mitzvah, so he has to get dressed anyway. So don't worry about it. Someone's asking if that's a rotating strobe arm.
Sorry?
Someone's
Yeah,
asking-
it's a flip bracket. I'll show it off a little bit better once I'm dressed. I'm not sure I'm comfortable even just saying that out loud.
This whole sequence should have just been a silhouette. Leave some to the imagination.
Are you like Superman, like you go into a phone booth that you're on location in?
No, I just take the time to, like I show up early and I take the time to get myself set. And yes, the question was, is that a flip bracket? Yes, it's a flip bracket. I try to keep the flash over the lens as much as possible. Like having that big stark shadow on one side or the other, I'm not going to say it's my least favorite thing in the world, but it's pretty darn close. Actually, I'm not going to ruin Seth's cameras by turning on the flash and potentially punching it out. But getting the weight off of my neck, I can do this for hours. The weight around your neck, but like by the time you're my age, you're going to be having neck surgery. You don't want neck surgery. Like a proper harness that distributes the weight across your shoulders and allows you to carry two cameras. Like you got to have good spatial awareness. Like there's a lot of opportunities to bump into things in the worst way, and on one level they probably hang down a little lower than I like, but the weight's good across my shoulders, and I can do this for hours.
Do you want me to move the table?
No.
Okay.
Oh, actually, you know what? I could walk around.
Well, then you're out of frame.
Oh,
You stay.
yeah. Thank you, son. Right? Cute.
Have you ever had any issues with someone bumping into your cameras and damaging them?
I have had lots of issues with people bumping into my cameras. I have never had an issue with somebody damaging it. I am prepared for that eventuality, but it hasn't happened yet. And I've worked in some pretty tight spaces. Part of it is about this. Like when I'm moving through a room, I do this. Also, this particular harness has these little hooks here that allow me to bring them up and put them on the belt if I need to, which actually, when this area starts to get tired, putting the weight on my hips doesn't suck. Okay? And another thing that's worth mentioning, I have pretty much two of everything. Like I don't have like 2 of these lenses. But I have an old 35-70 in the bag that I use as my backup emergency lens. I have a second battery. I've got double wires. I have another flash. I don't have another flash like this. I have like an old Vivitar 283 that I have in there as a backup. If I need, wow. I've got like half a dozen of them.
283 is that garage sale special. Man, still going. Look at this.
You know what this thing does that other flash units don't do?
Just work.
It just works.
Yep.
It just works.
That's why they're garage sale item. They've never died. But get the 285 at least at zoom head.
I have some of those too.
I'm sure you do. Where is it?
But when I'm packing stuff like that as a backup, whatever my backup stuff is, I usually aim for smaller. Yeah. Because this bag has pretty much everything I need to shoot an event and then some. It's still a lot.
You have a few questions that aren't gear related. You want to do it?
Yeah.
All right.
I'm ready for all of them.
One is, do you ever feel like you're you're overdressed for an event?
No such thing.
And
what's the worst thing in the world? People tell you you look great. Oh no.
Okay, like too fancy or whatever. And then
don't get me wrong. Like if I'm at a suit and tie event in a tuxedo, all right, I wrecked that. That was not well played. But if I'm wearing a suit and tie at an event where other people are not, oh no, I look great.
And then the other one is, what do you do what if a client wants a photographer but does not know how they want the photos delivered? Online prints? How do you make suggestions? What are they?
That's a really hard question to answer because usually the thing that you hope and dream for in your client is that they know what they want. I guess I would ask a lot of questions to try to figure out what they want but haven't figured out yet, right? My default is to deliver everything online. And for business events, that's usually what they expect. For business events, people aren't usually asking you for prints, unless they're asking for prints on site while the event is taking place, which is a whole different workflow and kind of experience. But for this kind of thing, for business events, it's usually all online. That's all I got on that one.
Okay. Do you typically wear the black shirt, black pants uniform when you're an event photographer?
No, usually I only wear black shirt, black pants when I'm wearing stage blacks.
And all the way, this is just men asking this, so you know that we have no idea how to even look presentable. I think that's kind of what's going on here.
I'm sorry, maybe some men don't.
Yeah, he made comments that I look whatever.
No, that's not what I said.
It's okay.
Oh, how you find the work, right? I have tried standing on the street with a sign that says, "I'm hungry, feed me." That has not worked out that well. And the thing,
Is it word of mouth?
Yes, but that's not a strategy. Like you can't build your business just saying, "I'm going to wait for word of mouth to work out." You cannot sit at home waiting for the phone to ring. I have to say that although, like in my heart, when I hear social media, what I think I'm listening to is an oxymoron, like military intelligence, jumbo shrimp, social media. Like I'm from the generation where media is supposed to be something that we just aren't social during. But LinkedIn, actually, has been really useful. And one of the ways that I use it is staying in touch with everybody that I have ever worked with ever and paying attention to where they've gone. And wherever they've gone, I try to reach out to them, say hi, be candid about, about why I'm reaching out and inquire whether or not there's somebody there I can talk to about their photography needs. I like the constantly pitching, marketing myself thing. It might be my least favorite part, but it's also the most important part. I try to keep work moving on my Instagram. I try to keep work moving on my website. Not that I reinvent my website every 6 months, but I try to take a couple things down and put a couple new things up on a pretty regular basis. And every single time I hear the word photography or photographer, I am walking over and getting in on that conversation, whatever it is. Whenever I'm talking to anybody, if there's anything about, "Oh, you're a photographer, I need a photographer." "Oh, I am a photographer, I can help you." Or I'm at some other event, or or I'm at an event and people ask me if I have a card. What do you know? I have a card. Like, I'm an old guy. I have business cards, right? Like, I am never disconnected from that. I'm never off on that. Whenever there's a conversation about photography, whenever somebody's talking about photography, whenever somebody needs photography, I'm there. Like, if I'm at an event and somebody one of the first best things I can do at the event, do a really good job. Be fun to work with. Be charming insofar as I know how to do that. Because that's what people are looking for. So I be that.
And then, do you eat at the events?
It depends on the event. Like, somebody's walking around with hors d'oeuvres? No. If the event involves a sit-down dinner and I'm being offered dinner, I don't say no. But I don't ask for dinner. And I don't reach for hors d'oeuvres. And I am never, ever seen with alcohol in my hands. Ever. And it does, like, alcohol or anything that could be mistaken for alcohol. Like, if I'm drinking a ginger ale, I'm hiding behind a curtain somewhere doing it, because that could be mistaken for an alcoholic beverage. And it's not that, like, even if you had one drink at the end of the night, that, like, you're going to ruin the job, but God forbid something happens. Like, your computer gets hit by lightning, you have a card failure, the camera goes up, and God forbid something happens. If somebody saw you with a drink in your hand, there's absolutely no way to avoid somebody's perception that that you were bagged. And even with an open bar, no, not drinking.
What about when you're on the job, like when you're talking with people at events, when you're taking their pictures, like how long do you keep a conversation before you know it's time, like I gotta keep going,
I don't have a ton of conversations. I mean, people will come over and talk to me or ask me questions, and I'll have a couple of things to say and share. And when there's a logical endpoint there, or I see a good opportunity, I say, forgive me, I had better get back to work or they will beat me up. Or forgive me, I have to get back to work or they will fire me. Or forgive me, I have to get back to work because work, right? And like, everybody's always completely understanding of that. When I'm approaching people to take their picture, I sometimes don't use words at all. Like, I will walk up to a group of people and go, and like, they laugh because I'm being ridiculous, and I take a picture of happy people laughing because I was ridiculous. Oh, that worked out good. What else we got?
That's it. You good?
I'm good. You guys good? Who else has a question about anything in the entire world? I'm quite clever. It's why they let me teach.
Last call, you could talk after.
Thank you all very, very much for coming. I hope it was not a waste of your time. And I appreciate you being here. I appreciate everybody's being here.